Yeah, and I will continue with my criticism or slight criticism of the Corbett report, not to be confused with Stephen Colbert, on the networks. This concerns James Corbett, the James Corbett News Network or News Hour or whatever. So what I want to point out here is that during all of your broadcasts, you're virtually what you're doing is almost without exception is to portray a point of view which is to some degree very westernized, even though you live in the East in Japan. But why, even in quoting various sources which are against this westernization, let's say people from Palestine or whatever, why won't you have these very people on your own website? Why don't you interview those very same people? Now, granted, sometimes you do, but these people are outside the territories, so to speak. And what would be wrong, for instance, with broadcasting or interviewing somebody like Cynthia McKinney? Somebody who actually speaks for their own, for her own community, somebody with a very different point of view. Now, granted, you cite her opinions or other opinions like that, but you never have them on for interviews. It is always, basically, all you do is interview white, Caucasian, or Asian males, okay? There's hardly a woman on your in your interview process at all, let alone somebody of color. So, and I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to make a quota here. All I'm saying is, even you should even reject me as a white woman, even making these sorts of arguments per se, okay? But why don't you have people on here who have completely different viewpoints than your own, rather than putting this fake neutralism out there, while projecting this sort of objectivity, which in reality, in the global picture, really does not exist. I would urge you to have people with very different viewpoints on your channel, on your interviews. This is you're constantly questioning the idea of capitalism, but at the same time, you're also promoting it. And as long as you don't invite people in who are anti-capitalist, truly anti-capitalist, okay, you can't call yourself an alternative channel, because you're automatically excluding a whole lot of people who have no representation on the internet or elsewhere, So this is all I've got to say. I'm not, I'm not trying to say that, you know, you need to broadcast some huge communistic propaganda shit or socialist stuff, okay? But there are so many voices that need to be heard, which are not heard on your channel. You are making people believe that everyone, out of their own volition, can just change their lives. That all government is now bad. That any kind of human interaction is, in terms of government, is automatically to be dismissed. That is, that's not true. There is, and always will be, corruption in government. But in terms of our progress, and especially in the Western world, I would like to think, James, that you are smart enough to recognize that the labor movement and the socialist movement and even the communists, okay, were instrumental in getting us Westerners our privileges in terms of the 8-hour working day, vacation time, paid time off, sick leave, or any kind of recognition whatsoever. So my critique is, why won't you put anything out there on your channel regarding the international labor movement? Was this all just some idiocy? Was it that people who demanded some rights were just idiots? Now to be dismissed as fighting an idiotic fight against globalism? I don't think so. And I don't think you're giving these people who fought and died for our rights enough credit. Now, granted, unions, especially in America, are, they've been eviscerated. And since the age of globalism, they've even become more irrelevant. And you're an anti-globalist. So you should think about very deeply as to why those globalists wanted to eviscerate the unions and why they're doing the very same thing in every country imaginable. But this is the one subject which I don't see you addressing at all. And I do feel that it needs to be addressed. In terms of globalization, if everything is going to come down to the lowest common denominator in terms of wages and working rights, then basically what you have is globalized slavery. And this is precisely what Michel Chossudovsky was trying to say in his initial videos on his own website. Please think about this long and hard before you make any other DVDs or videos. We cannot get along on this planet without working rights for ordinary people. And this is on a global scale. What we should not be pushing for is the equalization of the bottom line for those workers. That's the exactly wrong approach. And libertarians, and in particular anarcho-capitalists, are exactly pushing for that very same thing. Think about this very hard and don't act out of a reactionary defense mechanism. Think about this long and hard. We have 7 billion people on this planet. And bringing everyone down to the lowest common denominator for the sake of a few and for the sake of profit alone is probably not a good idea to proceed. It's a false premise. This entire idea of continued economic growth is a fallacy. We live on a finite planet. There will be no more growth unless you want to hurt other people in the process of doing so. And we need to all scale back, especially here in our Western societies. And we need to be very careful in terms of who we are aligning ourselves with. Is it going to be the 5% of the global elites, or is it going to be the rest of humanity? And are we going to be able to contain this explosion in greed and in selfishness, because it becomes a survival struggle amongst 7 billion people? This is something we all need to think about, because it's not an easy, there's no easy solution to this. So that's what I've got to say for tonight.